Hi, everyone. Sean Paul Ellis here from the Saturday Morning Cartoons podcast. Remember, that's morning with you. For the month of August, we've been getting into some 80s cartoons that are based on toy lines. 2 weeks ago, we started with The Adventures of Teddy Ruxpin, and now we're concluding this month of August with Pound Puppies. So what's actually happening now within our pre-show? Well, we're going to give some shout-outs directly related to the giveaway that we have that's going on right now, a very quick correction before we begin this episode, and what is actually going to be happening on our Pound Puppies episode. So for our shout-outs, I want to give a quick shout-out to Creed Stonegate on Twitter, at Creed Stonegate. He is actually contributing to our giveaway with some free stickers that are going to be, that are actually He-Man related, Castle of Grayskull, Power Sword. I just got them in the mail the other day. They are absolutely incredible, and they are way bigger than I thought they were going to be, which is fantastic. You can check out Creed's stickers and all of his art that he has, infinitecoolness.com. Definitely go check it out. Also go check out Mick Yarber on Twitter at Yesterdayville. You can also check out some of his writings as well as anything that he posts there on retroramblings.com. You can also definitely check out his Etsy store, which is Retro Ramblings Store on Etsy. Mick is actually contributing some of these unbelievably cool minifigures for He-Man Masters of the Universe that are of He-Man and Skeletor. They are just bonkers crazy and just wonderful. So couldn't be more happy with this. Speaking of extremely happy with things, because these people have just been all so cool about this, Brian Cave on Twitter at old_school_evil. That's old school evil with underscores in between. He's putting in his book. Yes, his book that he has, which is called Old School Evil, and it is all about the 80s as well as the villains from all of these different cartoons that we have talked about. And you can find all of this available from his book at oldschooleevil.com. And these are all going to be made available in our giveaway, which is ending on August 28th. So you can go anywhere in our social media accounts that we have, anywhere that's available there. Go on our link tree. It's the first top button. We've been posting this on all of our social media sites. Hope that you guys will enter. Hope that you guys are excited about this. We have more prizes that we're going to be announcing in the next week. Please go tell a friend, tweet, message, follow us on all these things. Can't wait. Just so you guys know, if you write a review on iTunes for us, that counts as 3 submissions. Yes, that's more submissions for you guys. So thank you in advance. So the quick correction before we start this episode, I say at some point that they don't make a particular stuffed animal for one of the members of the Pound Puppies called Cooler. Well, guess what? I'm absolutely wrong. They did make a stuffed animal for Cooler, but I have to be very honest with you. It does not look anything like the cartoon. In fact, if you're familiar with stuffed animals, it looks like an 80s toy called Wrinkles, which is sort of like a Shar-Pei stuffed animal that they would make. Plus, it had a cassette player inside of Cooler's chest. So it's basically a Teddy Ruxpin dog. So I feel like this is kind of a half correction for everybody, but I just wanted to throw that out there that I was wrong partially. So what's happening today on our Pound Puppy episode? Well, we have 2 new and wonderful guests that are joining us for the show, Jaci and Denny. Jaci and I pant as well as bark a bunch on today's episode, and Denny chats about his love of the writer's room for Pound Puppies. All of this and more on today's episode. So without further ado, on with the show. Hello, and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series, coming to you all the way from the Humane Rescue Alliance in D.C., where we help you adopt and train dogs. I'll be your host, Sean Paul Ellis, wearing a cone over top of her head and giving us the saddest of puppy dog eyes. We have DC-based performer Jaci Pulice coming to the show for the first time. Welcome, Jaci.
Thank you so much. Rescue me, please. Rescue me.
Not the show Rescue Me, but actually legitimately rescue
It's a plea for help.
Which is what so much of this show is going to be.
Exactly.
Wait, what is that? Wearing a very Cruella de Vil outfit. and scowling at every single animal that is in this room, we have DC-based performer Denny Johnson coming to the show for the first time as well. Welcome, Denny.
I'll get those dogs. That's my best Katrina Stoneheart.
Oh, God.
TBD.
Oh, I love it, though. I'm going to be honest with you. It's probably on par with a lot of the voiceover work that was done for the show. So, which is not that bad. So what I'm trying to say is that you're ready to go professional, Denny.
Thank you.
I think we're in a good place.
Thank you.
If you are not familiar with whatever we are talking about tonight, and there's no reason for you to have any idea based off of what the actual toy line is and the characters and names that we have just dropped, gang, we are talking about Pound Puppies this evening. We have had a couple requests for Pound Puppies. Mainly Slim Pickens on Twitter has said, I would like you to watch Pound Puppies. We have brought you Pound Puppies now. So we hope that you enjoy this episode. We want to start everything off by really kind of understanding exactly what our nostalgic anchor is with Pound Puppies. And so is this something, Jaci, that you had personal experience with? Did you ever watch this cartoon? We have toys that we can talk about. There's a lot there to unpack.
So there is a Pound Puppy in a Tupperware box in my parents' basement that needs to be rescued. Yes. But also was the toy that I slept with in my bed every night up until I would say like 3rd grade or so. So I had the toy and I remember the show, but in reviewing the show, I must have watched reruns or something because the year the show debuted, I was only 1 year old. So I watched the show somewhere.
We get it. You're young, you're youthful, exuberant.
Yes, hello. I'm like bright eyes. What? So yes, a lot of nostalgia for Pound Puppies.
Excellent. And so you watched actually some reruns at some point in time of this show when it was on TV?
Yes, I knew this show because you mentioned Saturday morning cartoons, and I made an offhanded comment like the only Saturday morning cartoon I watched was Pound Puppies, thinking you would dismiss that.
Absolutely not.
No. And now we're in my apartment. It's lovely. So yes, I do remember watching the show and watching these episodes. It all came back to me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's what we aim to do here. I mean, good to hear that you had such a great memory with it, and good to hear that I'm not a dismissive asshole when other people pitch stuff to me.
Exactly.
Awesome, Jaci. Denny.
Yeah.
What was your experience? What was your anchor with Pound Puppies?
So I was super excited to hear that we would be doing Pound Puppies because I had a gray Pound Puppy, which was in a Tupperware in my parents' basement, and now is a Tupperware in my basement because I tried to find it, and I know it's in my basement, but I can't find it. But I know I have it. I had the toy. It was I slept with it at my mom's house. It was a mom toy. I had my dad stuffed animals, and I had my mom stuffed animals. So I very much remember it. Now, here's the thing. I don't remember the cartoon at all, having watched it for this podcast. And so when you first brought this up, I was like, I know I'll remember it. I don't remember it at all. And if Jaci was 1, I would have been
85.
87 years old. We were looking for 87. I would have been 8 or 7 or 8. So disappointing. I don't remember the cartoon, but I loved the toy.
No, I mean, I agree with both of you. I think that's always the interesting question is what color was the Pound Puppy that you had?
Gray.
Did you have gray as well?
Brown.
I had brown.
My brother had brown. We were twins. My brother had brown and I had gray.
I had a chocolate lab kind of one, and then I had a smaller one, like a mini Pound Puppy that was kind of like, he looked like a chocolate chip cookie, where he was sort of like that light brown and then had like really dark splotches.
That's what my brother had.
Okay.
That's what my brother had.
And so I had 2. So I definitely had I had stuffed animals, and I think that it was definitely at that 80s moment because I was 6 years old when this show came out. And so it was always kind of fun because I had a huge stuffed animal collection as a kid. And I feel like maybe kids these days don't have as many stuffed animals. I only say this because my niece both of my nieces, like I will buy them toys, and I don't feel like they carry around or use a lot of stuffed animals at the moment. The big thing for them is like dress up. They're like 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like, they're not in that stage yet, but I'm looking forward to that stuffed animal moment where I can kind of share that. It was a big deal. Like I had like a Bart Simpson stuffed animal. I had like a Slimer from Ghostbusters that like you put your hand in the back and you could make him talk.
Yeah.
So I had like all this cool stuff.
Did you have a Care Bear?
I had a bunch of Care Bears.
Oh, those were the best.
So great.
And to your point, mine was not in a Tupperware container in my mom's basement. Mine is in a cedar closet, like a cedar chest.
Wow, you're keeping the humidity out of it, which is wonderful.
And the moths. That's the
And the
important thing.
moths.
That's what cedar chests are for.
That's right.
I think the crazy thing is that 2 weeks ago we had talked on this show about Teddy Ruxpin, and one of our guests, Tony Lazzaroni, had been looking up pictures online of the 80s version of Teddy Ruxpin, and guess what, gang? He does not age well at all. Like the fur is like matted, eyes are missing when you like Google original ones. Like it's kind of a sad state of affairs. But
I think my Pound Puppy is still in pretty good condition.
Well, yeah, he's in Tupperware, Jaci.
He's in Tupperware.
He's not getting any air.
I think he is doing quite well.
You have like a pristine Pound Puppy at this point. That's a collector's item right there.
eBay. It's gonna.
But
they didn't
have names, right? Do you guys, because you remember how Cabbage Patch, they had names?
They came with the birth certificate.
Yeah, they came with the birth
Cabbage Patch.
certificate,
But like you don't know what the name of your pound, right?
Well, it's in line with the pound. Did they name them at the pound? I mean, besides.
Not if I have a say about it.
Denny has disappeared, and we've had Stoneheart that's come back.
You're like Mrs. Hannigan right now.
I'll show you. I can't.
Oh, God.
Right.
So if you are not familiar with the Pound Puppies toy line that we're talking about, or the cartoon itself, Pound Puppies is a 1986 American animated series made by Hanna-Barbera Productions based on the toy line by Tonka, which Tonka, oddly enough, synonymous with like trucks and everything that they would have, decided to get into the kids market for puppies that were at £1, which is quite possibly the saddest thing in the world. It is the sequel to the 1985 television special Pound Puppies that kind of started everything. The show was broadcast on ABC between September of 1986 and December of 1987. In this series, no mention was made of Violet's whereabouts after the special. So there was a character named Violet in the special that they just almost completely wrote out for the animated series. The show found itself under a lot of competition from competitors such as Disney's Flup Dogs, which, with a name like that, how could you compete? Which was also adapted into a special, but unlike Pound Puppies, was never made into a regular series. It was the first cartoon adaptation of the property, and the second being the 2010 series that they've now rebooted. The newer Pound Puppies was a Canadian-American animated series that premiered on Hub Network, as in the Hub original series, and that began on October 10th of 2010 and ended November 16th of 2013. If you know anything about this show and Canadian cartoons, hearing that gives me cause for alarm. It is worth noting that Betty White was actually on the Canadian-American animated series, and she was the voice actress for a character named Agatha McLeish.
She's a huge animal rights activist.
Is she really?
No. Oh, yeah. Betty White is a huge animal rights activist.
She's the best.
She's great.
It's wonderful. So, yeah, just a little bit of context about the history of Pound Puppies, the actual animated series. And so, Jaci, you're going to give us a little bit of a synopsis about what we... Or actually, Jaci and Denny, you're both going to give us a little bit of a synopsis because this series kind of changed and evolved over time.
Yeah, so in season 1, you are introduced to Cooler, Nose Marie, Bright Eyes, Howler. They all are returning characters from the special that aired. And then we have a new character, Whopper, who is known for telling tall tales. And they are mighty tall and grandiose. The show also debuted the evil Katrina Stoneheart, who Denny has been impersonating.
I'll get you.
With her equally evil daughter, Brittina. Brittina has a pet cat, Catgut. And then we have Katrina's goddaughter, Holly. Holly is a friend of the Pound Puppies. She originally ran the Puppy Pound. Other characters included the horrific Captain Slaughter, who was responsible for the destruction of the puppies' hometown of Wagga Wagga. If you hear their accents on the show, it does not sound like they're all from the same hometown, but whatever. Katrina and Bettina were constantly planning to tear down the pound where the animals lived while organizing themselves to be adopted out to loving families.
In the second season, the series underwent a significant overhaul. It was re-entitled The All-New Pound Puppies. Several of the characters were given very different backgrounds, appearances, and personality traits. For example, Bright Eyes was significantly younger and had updated clothing. Nose Marie had changed as well. She dropped her strapless purple dress and flirtatious manner with cooler in favor of a 1950s sitcom-style mom with dress with apron, becoming a surrogate mother to Whopper, Bright Eyes, and the rest of the puppies.
Man. And we actually had an opportunity to see that sort of evolution from the first season to the second season for tonight, because we've watched season 1, episode 1, which is called Bright Eyes Come Home. And then we ended up watching season 2, episode 12, or it's episode 25 overall of the new Pound Puppies, that was called Peter Pup. And we watched this episode because it was the highest rated episode on IMDb with a 9.3, which is incredible.
When you think of the content, yes.
When you think of the content.
Yeah, who's voting?
Who
is voting?
It's everybody on IMDb,
Yeah.
Denny. Everybody.
Stoners, I think. If you saw that episode, I mean, I don't want to get into it.
Maybe
but
just
yeah.
people who didn't watch Fables or read stories
Yeah.
when they were a kid,
That's right.
or understand how to map those into actual original
Yeah.
storytelling.
They were like, this Peter Pup tale should become a story.
It was demonic almost.
And it was weird because they just had the Wizard of Oz with puppies.
Yeah.
But they called it Peter Pup. Very different.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, like any show that we have, we want to kind of kick this off and really dig into a couple common elements and themes that we've seen on all the cartoons that we've watched here for SMC. And so to begin this off, we are going to dig into the theme song. And so, Jaci, what were your impressions with the theme song that we saw for Pound Puppies?
So the word I would use to describe the theme song is triumphant. There's a real like bop, 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 and then it's like very like on the up and up, which again, given their circumstances, is highly optimistic. The other thing I love is how the theme song opens. It has a very Match Game 76
Yes.
feel. Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
expecting Richard Dawson to show up because they're like, and now Pound Puppies, and it has like a little like ramp up. It was so Game Show Network nostalgic when I rewatched it. And it has this. This is something I only noticed the second time I watched the theme song. There's this light panting of puppies keeping rhythm in the background.
Yep.
And it's like a. And it's just adorable.
Denny, are you blushing?
I am.
Are you blushing, Denny?
I am, and for several reasons.
So at any point in time tonight, we could just go like,
And it'd be normal. Finally.
So those are my thoughts on the theme song. I mean, it was Match Game 76 realness, triumphant optimism of survival, and a somewhat erotic doggy panting, keeping the rhythm in the background.
Excellent. Denny, what were your thoughts about the theme song?
This is insane. And Jackie and I have not talked about this, but I have a Match Game 76 reference later
Perfect.
that I want to talk about.
Wonderful.
And I didn't catch it in the theme song though. But when you said that, I was like, you're right. Ba-da-da-da-da. It's like,
Yeah.
What I wrote down was too long. It was
to
the point.
It was a minute long in length.
It was long. I also wrote down it's good overview of the hijinks that we're about to get into, because I do think every character sort of gets their take.
That's true.
But I did not. It was too long. It lost me. There's no words until the very end, and all the words are, "Send me home. I want to go home."
Did we watch the same theme song?
Oh wait, yeah. I mean, I think.
I'm kidding with you.
But I did not like this. I thought it was overproduced.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. No, good to know.
One man's take.
It's interesting because the music that they had in here really kind of started out very light with bass and drums, and then they added a little bit of what sounded like almost like a tin whistle, sort of later on, like when there's kind of like marching and going. And to your point, not only was there weird panting that they had, but then they also started this rhythmic barking. Where
Oh,
like,
yeah, they did.
Oh, that was too much. Yep.
Yeah.
And it kicked in like halfway through, and that's like 30 seconds in for this, and you're just like, all right, so we go from like to like, which is interesting.
It's like an arousal sequence, really.
It's too much.
Too hot
Yeah.
for 1986.
It's too hot for television.
Yeah, and they end with the barbershop quartet. I'm sorry.
Well,
I meant
quintet.
No.
I mean, there's 5.
Oh, that's true.
I don't want to. No, I'm not trying to do math here, but
Well, so
too much.
I will say this, and this is never like the intention for this show, but it's always crazy how much we have parallels for this. So when we talked 2 weeks ago about Teddy Ruxpin, the theme song, and I believe the voice actor who was Teddy Ruxpin sang part of the theme intro, and it's fine, but the guy's not a singer, which kind of makes it challenging when like the entire pitch to you is like, come dream with me tonight, and he's hitting a real flat note, and you're like, don't do that, Teddy. Just like keep maybe get like you're a successful toy line. Maybe get like a professional to kind of sing through that.
Does that guy go on to do another? Is he a character in the show?
He is. He's Teddy Ruxpin.
But is he a character in Pound Puppies?
No. So the idea that I have for this is that the actual like singing portion that we have for the Pound Puppies theme song is done rather well. I want to say the content or maybe the message behind it is very sad. It's challenging because it says, we're Pound Puppies and we want to go home with you. Please take us home.
Yeah.
But it's done like it's done in a very sing-song kind of quintet fashion, which is great, you know. And they're actually, and to their point and credit, they're in key for like when they're doing it. But like it's weird to see the contrast with Teddy Ruxpin, where it's like in the key of nothing versus like in the key of like, please adopt me, and you're like, oof. Well,
Yeah,
at least
it's rough.
Yeah.
I think it's
Rough.
Dog puns.
rough. Oh, I didn't even mean that way, but I think the whole thing might be a leftist conspiracy, and I say this as a leftist because it's about taking these dogs home and how it's very classist if you look at Katrina Stoneheart and the whole. I don't want to get into it too early. I'm saying the whole thing about waiting till the end of the theme song and then being like, "Take us home. You have to take us home."
Well, I mean, if anything, Denny, then I want to dog ear that for later, so we can continue talking about that.
He's barking up
Come
your tree,
on.
Denny.
Oh,
barking.
dear.
Are we doing dog puns this
Here it
entire
is.
show?
It's a thing now.
Perfect. So I thought this singing was actually done really well, despite the content being so sad. I love the fact that you not only received a visual, but like roll call, but you also had the announcer, which, as you were mentioning, was very game showy, kind of say, and now here's Cooler. And, you know, and like the Arthur Fonzarelli of this show, just kind of like popping in and out.
The worst.
The worst.
He's the worst.
But it's interesting to kind of see that, which is fun because a lot of times they will throw in cartoons a lot of characters at you very, very quickly. And you're sitting there like, who the fuck is this person? Like so much frantic kinetic energy in these openers because they're just trying to kind of get you ready for the vibe and the idea that they're going to bring you into. And for this, the show's kind of like, we're going to take a step back and be real chill about these need to be adopted dogs. So get ready for the sadness. But then, as Jaci had mentioned, it's such a warm intro with the like, it's the Pound Puppies. And you're like, this should not be said with such a chipper tone.
Right.
Right,
They're
because-
not about to win thousands of dollars.
That's right.
Like a game show.
But they might get adopted. They might stay right where they are for 3 seasons. Right, exactly.
If anybody's
much.
listening, this has now gotten into what we would qualify for Saturday morning cartoons after dark.
Oh.
We are in the after dark
Wow.
portion
I
of the
knew
show.
what happened 201 episodes in.
That's not the episode count, but I love you. regardless,
Whatever.
Denny.
You got it.
You got it. So I think it's interesting. Plus, you get a little bit of exposure to actually some of the villains that you're going to see, and so you kind of have an idea of who's actually going to be there. Whether it's going to be Katrina, Bettina, Catgut, but you have like weird kind of evil eyes that are going on in the background as well, which I think is kind of fun because it's like we have a yet to like TBD villain that you're going to see in the future.
Correct.
Evil is lurking. It was the message that I got.
Around this pound.
Yeah, and I thought Catgut, given the theme, would play a bigger role in the very beginning.
Okay.
But he or she, whatever it is, didn't. Though Catgut did come up, I don't know if we'll get to it in the second episode we
Right,
watched.
right.
I thought that was going to be the sort of Azrael.
Oh,
the
okay. From Smurfs.
Yeah, but
Gargamel's cat?
I didn't really, that Catgut never really came up in a way I was hoping.
There was a part of me that wondered if Catgut was the impetus for the sister line to Pound Puppies or the Pound Purries. Or
Right.
even like the puppy surprise and the kitty surprise. Do you remember these?
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Doesn't mean
like,
anything to me.
the whole idea, friend of the show and now wife of the show, Melanie Harker, has mentioned multiple times that there is a toy out there called Puppy Surprise and Kitty Surprise. And the whole idea was like they would go like Puppy Surprise 3 or 4 or 5, and you would like open up the stuffed animal like in a stuffed animal type uterus, and you would pull out, they'd have like multiple smaller stuffed animals
No.
inside. It was like a Trojan horse of stuffed animals.
Yeah.
It was
for
a
a kid.
lesson in biology and disappointment, which is nice
Oof.
because maybe you only got 2.
Are you saying that
I'm
you
just
didn't
saying,
know?
You
when
didn't know. You didn't know what you were gonna get.
Hence the name Puppy
Puppy
or
Sup-
Kitty
yeah.
Surprise.
Oh, like,
Yeah.
otherwise, it's not a surprise.
If they just named it like Puppy and you get 2.
That's fair marketing. But so is Puppy Surprise with all. But was 3 the max?
I think 3 was the minimum, 5 was the maximum.
Ah.
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then if you were that one random kid who just like didn't get any, you were just like,
Wah, wah.
oh, yeah, pretty much. Yikes.
Suicide
So
rate.
to your point though about the Pound Puppies being a sister line to the Pound
Correct.
Puppies, one thing that they introduce in the theme song that really is interesting to me, and maybe I'm just out of touch.
No,
with
get into it.
what's going on with the different animal species, but how much cats are antagonists to dogs. Like, so it's interesting to me that they would then introduce Pound Puppies as like cute, lovable things when this series really villainizes cats.
That's exactly
does.
right.
I mean, there is that old idiom, we fight like cats and dogs.
Yeah.
We're fighting like cats and dogs. And so to kind of have a sister line to it, I guess doesn't make a lot of sense. But at the same time, if you volunteer or if you go to any adoption shelter, any humane rescue society that they have that's out there, they have cats and dogs. I mean, they're separated.
It's the invisible hand of the market.
Jesus.
I'm not joking. These people know how to make money, and they're like, you know what the Pound Puppy people, you know what the opposite of Pound Puppy people is? The Pound Purry people. And we can sell just as much to those guys.
Mhm.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because is there a cartoon, Pound Purry?
I don't believe so. I don't think that
They just
Pound
went
Puppies. I think
straight
they
to-
just did the Pound Puppies.
Yeah.
I think that this was sort of the Tonka flagship line that they had for getting into
Oh.
stuffed animals back in like 1985, 86. And so Pound Purries came shortly after. And again, for them, it was just kind of like we had success with one animal. If you would have let them go with like another animal that they could have mapped alliteration onto, they would have done like rabbits and bears and other crap they could have thrown in there, as long as it rhymed with like a P and you could put it in a pound.
That's right.
Right.
You got it.
Yeah. Weird.
Weirdos.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the animation, and I wanted to kind of get your idea, because this is very early and mid 80s animation, and so there are a lot of cartoons that are out and around during this time in terms of contemporaries. There are a lot of interesting things and color choices that they make in this show. And so, Jaci, I wanted to start with you and ask you what your opinion was of the animation for this show.
So to me, it was very familiar. And I watched the episode before really reading more about the show itself and revisiting, like, who made the show. And I was like, oh, it's very Hanna-Barbera, like,
Yeah.
to myself. Like, I really can't. And I'm patting myself on the back because I was like, oh. And then I looked up later and I was like, it really does look. It just has that Hanna-Barbera look to it. And it's, to me, what a classic cartoon should look like.
Okay.
Yeah. So I liked it. I like the animation style. It's it's very flat, and at times it's very hokey, but the show is also sometimes flat and hokey. So yeah, I liked the animation style of it.
Okay. No, great. That's good. Denny, what are your thoughts?
I think it's like super great that you cast me as the villain in this, because I'm from Ohio, and we have a bunch of amusement parks in Ohio, and one of them is Kings Island. And Kings Island had a Hanna-Barbera land growing up.
Really?
Yeah. Like, so they had a bunch of cartoon-themed rides. And so I do agree that it's Hanna-Barbera. Like, when you said that in the opening, I was like, yep, that's it. It's Hanna-Barbera. I have a very negative connotation with Hanna-Barbera because I just did not like my childhood.
I am like settling.
Like,
into
I'm not
this.
even, like, I know I don't have to go to therapy because I already did. I know what it is. I do not like that kind of animation. And this reminded me of it. And I'll give you an example. When they start a scene, it's like the picture of the pound that's static, and they're like playing music over it. It drives me crazy. I think when I was watching this, I was like, I don't remember watching this, but I remember watching cartoons like it, and it made me uncomfortable because I was like, this reminds me of my childhood, and animation has come so far, and I'm glad because I would not want to watch this now. It's too familiar. I didn't like it. And I don't think it's the animation. I don't want to blame the story or anything. I think I am upset about my childhood. I'm not joking. And I did not like this animation because I was like, this is where my mind went. There's a writer's room of people writing this.
Yes.
And I didn't like it. Because I was like, why? That's what they came up with? Because I really think you and me and Jaci sitting together could have done a better job. With the lines, obviously not the drawing.
Sure. None of us here are
we're not animators.
No, we're not.
But I didn't like it. It reminded me of the things in childhood that I didn't like because it felt very static animation. I kept seeing Scooby Doo and Scrappy Doo. And I did not like that.
And to your point, I think that you're spot on with that. I noticed a lot of Scooby-Doo influence here. I mean, Scooby-Doo originally created and put together by Ruby Spears, but it was produced, the show, by Hanna-Barbera. And so it's interesting to see because in terms of the animation, I want to say a lot of the same color palette from Scooby-Doo. You know, if you look at Cooler, he had sort of like a blue kind of highlight and jacket, very similar to Fred. You know, at some point you saw Bright Eyes had a green. She had like a green accent, very similar to like Shaggy. You know, and there was sort of like, even personality wise, I was like, there was a certain naivete that both of those characters might have in terms of what they were doing, or a certain longing that they would have in terms of what their motivation and goals were as characters. You know, and then you look at Nose Marie, she's in purple. You know, so like I almost felt like every single character that was here, with the even Whopper, you know, and Cooler at some points, like Cooler would make comments in one of our episodes about puppy power, and then you had Whopper, who was essentially the size of Scrappy Doo, and Cooler is saying a Scrappy Doo line, and I'm just like, this is straight up ripping off Scooby Doo right now. This is incredible to watch this. And so I agree with you. Could not agree with you more. That was my biggest idea about this, is that I think that a lot of the costume and colors felt like it was almost like 70s style inspired from like a variety show, like Cher and Sunny variety show that you would see. Like, and Howler kind of almost felt like he was the embodiment of that, with like the patch over his eye and like the goofy bowler and the vest, you know, and everybody kind of hammed and cheesed it up to the camera, like trying to break the fourth wall during
constantly.
Like, that's what I have written down.
Cooler couldn't help himself.
Yeah. He couldn't help himself. And my Match Game 76 reference is that Howler is Charles Nelson Riley. He is. Not in the second episode, because God forbid we use Howler to. I mean, like, here's the
Use
thing:
him
Howler is the
sparingly.
redeeming quality of this show. And in the first episode, he's a dream come true. He's Charles Nelson Riley with a hint of Phyllis Diller thrown in.
I was going to say Phil Dill.
Right? And
Yeah,
he's,
they go hand in hand.
I want to see more of him. He's the one dog I like.
No, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just it's crazy to think that like we've all kind of hit on the same kind of 70s idea or motif that seemed to really, really inspire this show. Speaking of inspiration or the lack of inspiration, this show had a lot of recycled animation, and the most telling point for me was that we had this Pound Puppies theme song, and then in the first 30 seconds, we had Bright Eyes in an instance where she's kind of like in an alley, and she's a little bit scared, and they have these alley cats that are coming up, and they're making this like motion coming towards her, and they use that same bit of animation in 30 seconds 3 separate times, and I lost my mind thinking like, did these cheap shits not think that I was gonna see this and realize that? I mean, it took me out of it for a moment, you know, and then it didn't feel like they really kind of got into that kind of like recycled and reused animation over and over again. But animation style, I was curious, and I was surprised to see that much so often.
Mm-hmm.
We had a member of our Twitter community that kind of reached out and asked the question to us very, very recently. You know, what has been a cartoon that you've watched over the years that you kind of thought to yourself like, oh no, why am I watching this again? Like this is not good. And this goes to Sin 8-bit on Twitter for asking this question, and I answered Voltron, the original 84 version, because it has so much recycled and reused animation over and over again that I loved it as a kid, but then as an adult, when I watched it, it kind of really just ruined the whole experience for me. And so that's when I hear that, it's like I call it the Voltron effect, that I'm just like, oh, I liked this thing as a kid, but as an adult, like, oh boy, I cannot get into this anymore.
Right. I saw that in the theme song. They use cat gut. There's this cat gut. There's this cat gut opening up a lid situation, and he or she, whatever. I don't think it's made clear.
I think it's a gender neutral cat.
Gender's a spectrum, and I want to be on record that gender is a spectrum. And it comes, cat gut comes up, and so in Peter Pup, what is that? What is the second show?
Yeah, Peter Pup was the second
Peter
episode.
Pup. Catgut does the same thing as like Catzilla or something. I forget what it is, but
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is, and if they're recycling it in episode 25, how many times has Catgut like done this?
How many times has Catgut become a Godzilla character to kind of
Right.
terrorize these dogs?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yikes. That's crazy.
It's not great.
No, especially, again, anti-cat propaganda everywhere in this series.
Classic classism.
Yeah, no wonder cat ladies became a thing.
That's right.
Aw.
It's all Pound Puppy's fault.
It's Pound
These women
Puppies'
felt
fault.
shame. People felt shame.
They collected these Catzillas.
And you would think for a show that is kind of based on shame and guilting you into adopting a dog, because like if any theme song is just like, we wanna go home with you, please take us
Yes,
home. Like that's a plea.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, the messaging is on the nose a little. for the
And we
Pound
all saw
Puppies.
those
on
cats.
the nose, Marie.
Oh,
On
I
the
love
nose,
Nose Marie.
Marie.
I'm upset with myself for that.
That's not even a
Too
dog
much.
pun. That's
That's
a Pound
That's a
Puppies
Pound
pun.
Puppy
Pound
pun.
It's a P3 right
That's
now.
a
I managed to do
P3.
it.
P cubed.
But speaking of P cubed and Nose Marie that we have in general, so we have a bunch of characters that are in this show, and we have quite an interesting list of actual characters that are kind of contained in this. Like we have Cooler, we have Whopper, we have Nose Marie, Bright Eyes, Howler, Holly. Tonight we talked about Katrina Stoneheart. We have Brittina, her daughter. We have Catgut. These are all characters that we've mentioned, and so kind of what I wanted to do is open this up. Like, was there anybody that you loved or you liked? We could play Fuck, Marry, Kill with some of these characters.
Let's do
We don't
that.
have to. Or yes, we can.
Yeah.
So who did I love or like?
Yeah. Who when you saw that character, who were you just like, you know what? I'd like to see more of this character. I really enjoyed it.
Well, this is a psychological thing. I liked Nose Marie because I think we look alike.
I'm
Yeah, I'm
dying.
saying it. Look at me. I look like Nose Marie.
I love all of
Guys,
this.
she has a big nose. You can't see me, but I have a big nose. She's got dark eyes, tan skin. I mean, it's all there. So I thought she was fabulous.
You bear your shoulders quite well.
Yeah, and my favorite color is purple. I loved her. She was a doll. She's a darling. She's helpful. She's loving. She's nurturing. That's where we differ, but we look alike. And she was probably my favorite
She was great.
because I would say a close second runner up is Holly, but I feel so bad for her.
I feel so bad for her, and we'll get into her shortly.
Okay,
because I
yeah,
feel
let's
there's a
go-
lot of
let's-
stuff to unpack.
Let's
Good.
deep dive on
I
her.
do
So
wanna get into
for
that.
me, psychology, you like what you know,
Mhm.
what's close in proximity. These are all factors. So that's why I liked Nose Marie.
Okay.
I'm just being honest.
That's great.
Oh no. Was there any character that we've talked about that you're just like, I could never. I wish I had not seen them in the show at all.
Cooler is a jerk. I hate him. I can't stand him. If we were in high school together, I wouldn't have signed his yearbook. I would have been like,
Wow.
no, it's done. We
Yeah.
don't get along. We
Yeah.
wouldn't have gotten along.
That's
He's
right.
intolerable.
Do you now psychological question again? Do you feel personality wise that you wouldn't have gotten along with him because you're too similar to him, or you're just too much of a juxtaposition?
Well, yeah, sometimes I talk like this.
Hey.
Yo,
Hey,
I'm Tony
I'm
Danza.
the-
I'm cool.
come down the sewer drain.
Oh,
Hey, Angela.
literally.
Samantha.
So I looked up. I was like, did Tony Danza do Cooler's voice?
Did Tony Danza have a
And
rough
again,
spot?
Maybe
And he
it's
had
this
to do the Cooler's voice.
70s influence. Because what? Tony Danza was on Tax. Was he on Taxi?
No.
I don't think so.
No, before Who's the Boss, Tony Danza was on.
Was he on Taxi?
I think Tony Danza.
We're gonna find
We're gonna have
this
a
out.
fact check.
Sabrina.
Fact
That's
check.
our assistant. Sabrina, find this out.
Anyways, Cooler has this real Tony Danza vibe to him, and it's all about him. Like he always brings it back to himself. He laughs at his own jokes. He's
Oh my God, he was on Taxi for like 5 years.
guys. Again,
Jackie.
1985.
Apologies
Jackie
from these
Pulice.
assholes. I'm so sorry.
Thank
Oh
you.
my God.
Good for you.
Yeah, I watched a lot of late night.
Mary Lou Henner. Was she on Taxi?
Mary Lou Henner was she that girl? No, that's what's her
No,
name.
that's
Mary Lou Henner was on Taxi.
yeah, I think that's right.
I watched that whole.
think they
See,
had
now we're going off, but there was
Mary Lou Henner was on Taxi.
there
Yeah,
was that
okay.
late night. It was Block Party Summer. Was a Nickelodeon run during the summer one year, and it was like Taxi, Welcome Back, Kotter,
Oh yeah.
and all Happy Days, all of those shows, and so that's how I know that.
I was big into Mr. Cotter, Happy Days, and then I jumped back into like Patty Duke Show, My Three
Oh.
Sons,
Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed. Watched all the
Yeah.
you know, it just so much of that was just television that was on, and I was like, this is really interesting, and for some reason this kind of resonates. Why am I watching so much of this? You know, but I couldn't stop.
It was on
you know.
for hours.
It was
Can
on
I
for
ask,
hours.
what's the Sean Jackie recommends? One show, deep dive.
Mary Tyler Moore.
I mean, Mary Tyler Moore
well,
show is
Mary
fantastic.
Tyler- well, yeah, I mean, okay.
I mean, I really liked Patty Duke.
Really?
I thought
Good.
that was
Okay,
a
I'm gonna
great.
watch
I
it.
thought that was a fun show.
Okay.
I just got into it for like years and years.
Great.
So that's my recommendation.
Sean, we recommend to you Empty Nest
Ugh.
because we talk.
Did you watch Empty Nest?
Denny
I
and
did,
I
yeah.
talk.
Richard Mulligan?
We have a
Yeah.
lot of TV.
Park
crossover.
Overall?
Park.
Excuse me?
We're really
Park
doing
Overall?
this to talk about Park Overall because no one's ever mentioned her on a podcast.
There was a
probably.
failed Golden Girls pilot that they did inside a Golden Girls show
Yeah, I watched
with Rita Moreno.
Yeah, I watched Empty Nest. I watched that a bunch because that was like I was back in the time when I was like watching Mrs. Garrett, who just passed
Facts
away.
of
Facts of
Life.
Facts of
Life.
Life. Facts of Life.
Oh.
And so
Good.
that was like that was one of those big shows that like I
So
watched
great.
for just years where I was like, again, it was it was like a reason to stay home sick to get excited about it, because I was like,
Yes.
I'm gonna watch Facts of Life and I'm gonna watch game shows and Quantum Leap, and so these were like things that
To
Yeah.
set right.
Well, Sean
What
said
once
earlier,
went wrong.
he doesn't take me as someone who watches a lot of TV. Now I don't watch that much. It's because that's all I did as a child.
She
I
filled up
quit-
early.
I quit dance lessons because I didn't want to miss my television.
Oh my
I didn't
God.
want to miss my programs. So, yeah.
Jackie, your shows are on.
My
Get
shows
down
were on.
here.
I had to go.
and that was the time when you couldn't like TiVo them or DVR them.
No,
at
that's
that point.
right.
Right.
Jackie's mother said to her father, "You got to stop watching Monday Night Football because Murphy Brown is on."
I need to see those shoulder pads.
And now it's coming back, and everything old is new again.
Yeah, it's perfect. So,
Wonderful.
Denny, I'm going to move on and just talk
Okay.
about some of these characters that you
Yeah.
had. And what was your love it or hate it in terms of these?
Howler.
You hated Howler?
No, love.
You hated Howler?
It's what we know. It's what Jackie said. So
You hate Charles Nelson Riley?
no, here's the thing. I watched Howler, and I was like, okay, so Howler's me, and I love Howler. But I literally said, I thought to myself, I'm going to be watching this with Jackie, and I said, Nose Marie is Jackie. Like, and Howler and Nose Marie, they have a thing where he goes into her doghouse, which is entirely too big. I don't know if you saw that, but you walk into Nose Marie's doghouse, and it goes on and on and on, even though it looks small.
She's a diva.
Yeah, and Howler he's bombastic, and he's crazy, and I think, and then in season 2, he's nothing.
Yeah, they
And-
minimized the hell
and
out
all,
of it. it seems
and
like.
I'm sick about it. But Cooler, I'm with Jackie 100%. Cooler, here's what I wrote down. I want to read this word for word. Cooler, you wouldn't want to travel across country with him. That's what I wrote. Because here's why. Howler is a guy who sees a sign.
Wait, Cooler. Cooler is the guy.
Cooler.
Yeah.
Cooler is a guy who sees a sign on the side of the road and has to comment about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
He's your dad, and I love my dad, but he's full of dad jokes and breaking the fourth wall, and he's full of nonsense. So I know he's used as a framing device for storytelling. Like, I'm going to let you in on the joke. It's unhelpful.
Okay. All right. So this will be interesting. I'm going to start with my hate it first.
Ooh,
Yes.
good.
And I'm going to say that I actually I didn't like the content or the focus for the character Bratina, because I felt like a fun accent, and we can get into that. But I know that Jackie might have an impression.
Oh, I'm ready.
Oh,
It's-
cue it up.
Cue it up.
It's ready, Sean. I'm coming for you. Mommy,
Mommy.
Oh my God.
But I mean, it's very interesting. It's pretty unique to hear the vocal work that they did for that specific character. But I'll say, for the villain to then also have sort of a deputy villain that's the daughter, it didn't make a lot of sense to me in terms of servicing the story, because like you said, it felt like it was mainly filler conversation, which is like, Mommy, oh, what am I doing? Oh, what am I doing here? Oh, and you're like, wrap it up. I will say that I did enjoy the Whopper character. I think just, again, psychologically, because it was very imaginative. There was a lot of things going on, a lot of storytelling, and a lot of like creating sort of like this weird, interesting fantasy of things that were happening. It was kind of cool to see where he would take that character. Plus, I distinctly remember, like, probably in the 80s and in the early, like, mid 90s, I was watching a lot of wrestling. And so there were moments where like he would dress up like superheroes or wrestling characters, and like that was a big deal for me during that time. So I definitely related to that. I'll say I actually have a slightly contrasting feeling and opinion about Cooler. I kind of felt I felt like he was sort of the person every once in a while that he was just like, I want to make sure everybody's having a good time and they feel like they're taken care of. And I like that kind of quality and aspect. I see what you're both saying.
It was too on the nose.
Enough of the dog puns.
No.
we get it. We
And
get
I'm
it.
not even
trying.
I know. But yeah, I think that it was something where like I loved the fact like he was very protective of certain characters, and like his objective and his goal should have been the objective and goal of everybody that was on this show, which is like, I'm going to make sure that you have a loving home. And you're just like, what a fucking sweet guy. But the way he kind of goes about it, maybe not the best.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you more. I sort of think it was the writers trying to put themselves in the show in that way.
Okay.
And I just think there's a smarter way to do it. He would literally turn to the TV screen, break the fourth wall, and be like, you know what it's like. And it was like, I felt like I was in Vegas. I just felt sick.
So I have to say, because now Sean has me coming around on Cooler.
No.
Oh.
This was something, though, I did want to mention that I think is interesting, is Cooler is the only real male dominant character. The Holly is a female.
Right.
The villains are both females. So it it's just interesting. And again, not that it was good to make that heteronormative, like he's the guy. Like it's like it was weird because there was no male human presence.
Right. Not at all.
But the one who still figured out was the male, but it was a dog.
I got to
The
tell
one-
you, though, I just want to make sure, and here's the thing. I'm the last person to ever do this, but I want to make sure we're not calling this feminist at all because...
No, it's not. I'm
Okay.
saying it's
Oh.
it's almost saying like still at the end of the day, the one who pulled it all together and was
Yeah,
the
okay.
voice of reason
Okay.
was the man.
'Cause I-
When it could have been one of the many lead female characters.
okay. I just
Right.
want to make sure that...
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I wrote down at one point, especially in Peter Pup, that
No.
it's almost anti-feminist.
No, cool-
because
yeah.
Bright Eyes is a dummy, and she's not allowed to do anything. And it's all about Whopper and Cooler and how am I allowed to curse on this?
Yeah, of course.
How fucking dumb they are. They're fucking dumb, and it's like, cool. I'm gonna give, if you can give me 15 more seconds. It's all about them flying around, and
we're out of time.
and and Cooler being like, as long as nobody lies, and Whopper's like, I never lie, and it's just, and Bright Eyes is just along for the ride. She's not allowed to say a goddamn thing in that entire episode.
And Nosemarie's trying to get a word in, but
Yeah.
her house is so big she can't make it to the scene by
She's
the time
sprinkling fairy
she
dust.
could help
She's
out.
sprinkling fairy.
Cooler is the kind of guy who, when you walk by him at 8:45 in the morning, you missed the 43, you got to get on a 42 bus.
Ugh,
The day is awful. He's
don't even
like,
get me started.
smile, sweetie.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You know why? Because he's always got something to say.
He's always got something to say.
He's never without a line.
I had an aha moment, though, to switch gears
Sure.
quickly. Is Whopper reminiscent or somewhat stolen of Snoopy? Because Snoopy was, you just said this, Sean, about his fantasy, because Snoopy was imaginative.
right.
Red
With his
Baron.
Red Baron.
Yeah.
Everything, like, he was always in his head. So do we think that that's a bit of a stolen identity? Or I defer to you on
No,
this.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
I can definitely see some of that. I definitely see sort of in terms of the stature, the Scrappy Doo character that we have from, again, Hanna-Barbera, in terms of what they're doing. And then I think even in this Peter Pup episode, they keep saying puppy power over and over and over again. And that was Scrappy's like, puppy power. Like when he'd get ready to kind of like wind up and get ready to box somebody. And so, he'd be like, his charge was like that, puppy power. And then he'd like rush at the villain for the show. So I feel like there's a lot of elements from dog animation that they just tried to pull into one character. I think it's varying degrees of success for it. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
agreed. So we've kind of talked a little bit about some of these episodes, and we've kind of talked a little bit now about some of the content of some of these episodes. And so for tonight, we began with season 1, episode 1, Bright Eyes Come Home. And I know that we've talked about the Bright Eyes character and just sort of how minimized they tended to make her in some of these episodes. And so we're not going to go beat by beat for this actual episode, but we have a couple questions that we think need to get answered. And I'll say I'm going to start off with a non-dog character related episode and just say, hot take, is it a good idea to put a young, maybe teenage girl in charge of an entire business to run a pound for multiple dogs.
Thank you.
I mean, there we are. Not a realistic expectation. And you're being generous, Sean. My note was she's 9. I think
really?
she's 9 years
Oh
old.
my
Like,
God.
I don't think Holly has even,
She
she's
hasn't
not
had
wearing a training bra.
She
Like,
hasn't had a period.
yeah, she hasn't. Denny's like, I could curse. I could do anything. Yeah, but she definitely is like, it's not even, she's not an inkling of a woman yet. I mean, it's abuse. And the sad thing is actually she's the one who wants to go home. She wants to be
Oh.
rescued.
What do
She's
you
in
want?
the pound.
Oh, my fucking
We
heart.
never
Guys,
see her
yeah.
parents. Ugh.
Yeah, because so Katrina is her godmother and is literally leaves her to this pound. I think she lives there. I mean, we don't ever see her in a home. Also, she has some sort of like control panel underground situation where
Yeah,
There's
she
a lot
can
going
see
there's a lot
everything.
going, like an underground lab.
She's
Yeah.
really kind of a voyeur when it boils down to it, where,
Mhm.
you know, there's a moment where this whole episode really kind of starts off with we have Bright Eyes trying to get adopted, but then the bigger kind of overarching A plot that we have for this is Holly getting $200 for an electrical bill
Yes.
that her aunt or her godmother has kind of given to her and said, if you can't pay this by the end of the day, I'm going to take away the pound. And to me, I was like, I don't know that you understand how property works
No,
or
that's
utility
exactly right.
bills.
I have so much to say. Yeah.
And then moments later, she's like, you have until the end of the week. And I was
That's
like, what?
exactly right.
I was like,
Yes.
what the fuck is it?
The goalposts are constantly moving on this.
Yeah. And so it's challenging. And so feel free to get into it, Denny. I mean, these are.
I was disturbed by an adult figure showing up and saying, you have an electric bill you can't pay to a child. But here's the thing. My first take on this was, if I'm going to map it onto today's society, this is classism. I mean, Katrina is the upper class and Holly is the lower class. This is what I was thinking. Despite the fact that Holly is not of age, she can't possibly run any of this. I'm thinking exactly what you were thinking. You gave a deadline. We missed the deadline. You changed the deadline. Irregardless, you're not the utility company.
Right.
Why are you collecting this money? But long story short, it's disturbing to me that such a young child is running the entire pound. And I think that's one of the things they changed in season 2.
Yeah, I mean they gave her multiple pounds that she had to run. She sort of became in charge of a pound conglomerate at that point. So she had a lot more, like CEO of a pound.
She got a promotion.
She got a promotion.
No, I'm
doing such a great job.
yeah, for not having to euthanize dogs.
But so much of this cartoon would not fly today because you also have this Hollywood guy, this greasy, grimy guy showing up and taking away what is essentially the 9-year-old dog into a life of crime.
Right.
It's all a little too close to the nerves for today. This would never fly.
And it's interesting because we have this character. We've talked about all these characters, but then we have a single episode character that comes in to kind of further some of the plot points that we have here. His name is Samuel Quinton, which, if that sounds familiar, sure, you may understand that, and it might be a reference to the California Corrections Prison, San Quentin, that they have that's out there.
Oh my God.
I know, right?
Love it.
Yeah. So we have this character who comes in and adopts the female dog Bright Eyes, who really kind of begins the episode with that whole goal, that desire of like, I was out looking around and in these alleys because I was trying to find a home. I was trying to find this forever home. And you're like, this is fucking heart-wrenching.
It's a writer's room of a Hollywood studio, isn't it? I mean, like, isn't this what happens?
I mean, you to break it down, I mean, you have a lot of options, that are kind of on the table. And so, part of it is like, how do we tell a story? How do we understand what these characters are, what their focus and their motivation is? And so if the focus and the motivation and goal is actually to get adopted, how desperate are they? You know, and what is the level of desperation? And with Bright Eyes, it seems like she's gotten to a point where she's like, enough is enough.
Well, Bright Eyes knows Holly has to also be learning times tables in her free time. She's taking the situation into her own hands. Again, she had to get scrappy. I mean, I got to give the girl some credit.
I mean, I think it's a strong choice, and it's a strong move on her part and her character. But then to suddenly kind of get caught up in this and saved by Cooler, I was like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, here we go. This is exactly right. I mean, this is everything this is what we recognize as wrong with today's society. But in the 1980s was like, yep, that's how it goes. You needed a male dog to come in and swoop in and save you.
It's challenging. I along with the swooping in and saving portion of this, we kind of have Cooler saying like, it's my responsibility. Hey, it's my responsibility.
Right.
Hey, and he hits a jukebox and and then the Weezer music video plays in the background.
Wait, they do a lot of sporadic dancing and singing. Speaking of hitting when they show up to that like puppy, like all the older, bigger dogs.
Yeah.
And they're like, what we want to do is twist or
that. Yeah.
Let's do the twist.
So
yeah,
we're talking about like at the very end of this episode, they go to this location that's called the Bark and Growl Cafe. It's where all the tough dogs hang out. And they go in here to ask questions to find where this Samuel Quinton character is that has taken Bright Eyes from them. And so in a moment of conflict that they have, they just simply go, you have any last requests? And he goes, yeah, let's do the twist. And then in one scene, they're dancing and they're doing the twist. And then they're doing it on the side of the wall. And I was like, when did this show fucking defy gravity?
Right, exactly.
When did we get all wicked in terms of being able to put dogs on the side of a wall to do an old dance move?
But also, those dogs were like, let's find him. And the guy was like, I just need to find Sam Quinton. And they were like, well, we'll sniff him out. But they all hated him. They could have sniffed him out the whole time.
Yeah.
It's the continuity of it doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, and you know what? I'll say this, and I think you bring up a really great point, Denny, is that when we're kids and we were in the 80s, whether we were 1 or 8 or 6, and we were watching this show, we gave all these cartoons a lot of leeway, that they were just kind of moving us through this story and this idea. I mean, look, if I thought to myself in the 80s that, like, there were actually Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when I got older as 38, I'm in for a lot of crying, which is what I do constantly.
Oh, I love that.
Don't worry about it. But it's...
Sean,
yeah.
Kleenex.
Thank you. But you know, so you get a lot of leeway in terms of story progression as a child who's watching some of these things, and like it doesn't have to make sense. They're just trying to kind of keep in some sense positive and uplifting and motivating for kids to watch. And I mean, ultimately, it might be a little wholesome, you know, to a point where you're like, this does not make sense in terms of actual storytelling, you know, but it's not offensive. And it's not terrible, you know? They did multiple kind of like songs, to Jackie's point, to kind of like cheer up Bright Eyes. And then we had a twist segment that was like 16.
Like, when you leave, we'll sing this.
Like, goodbye, Bright Eyes. Goodbye, Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
Like
a lot of sporadic singing in Pound.
And they also dressed in trench coats to enter the bar and growl, and then but then to deliver the news to Bright Eyes, they gave her a fake newspaper created out of whole cloth,
right?
In which she was convinced to do her next role or something. It was all. I get your point about the story progression. Like, you just got to go with it,
right? And I think, along with story progression in here, that's always interesting. And we've talked about sort of the sporadic singing. I think that's what's always interesting is that like you have characters who will make dialogue choices to the writing, to the point about the writing that is always like super, super interesting to me. And so sometimes that comes about in terms of like what a catchphrase would be for that specific character. And I don't know if you notice this, but there's that moment where they're trying to find Bright Eyes and Sam Quinton. And they're trying to bring her back because they've realized that he's not really a movie producer. And so Cooler has this line that really made me cringe. Maybe you guys will remember this, but Cooler just goes, "Pound puppies, let's start pounding," and I just went, okay. Like, I was like, how sexy is this show gonna get right now?
Let's start.
It all goes back to that
pounding.
panting and pounding.
We've all been there.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just let's start pounding.
Oh,
And I was like,
gosh.
But I mean, I guess my point is, someone wrote that.
yeah.
Like, there was a writer's room.
Denny has it out for the writers' room of Pound Puppies.
I don't know. It's just like, were they just like, we can get away with anything because people don't get it yet?
I mean, possibly. I mean,
Maybe.
they're sticking in euphemism. They're sticking in things that, again, like almost 30 years later, 30 plus years later, we're watching this now and we're thinking to ourselves, like, we kind of have a little bit more context in terms of sexual innuendo.
Right.
We sort of have been exposed to more. We've maybe become a little desensitized to some of the things that we hear. And so back in that day, they were probably just like, kind of like a let's hit the streets, like let's pound the pavement. And like but like when we hear this now, we're just like, oh, how much were those dogs fucking back then?
Fucking all the time.
Yeah.
Well, in the pound, especially, it gets lonely. Here's the thing that was said that I wanted to talk about, though. At the end of this episode, to speak of the writers that Denny hates so much, they go, I think it's Cooler. Of course it's Cooler because he does all the talking. He's like, "We saved Bright Eyes from a life of crime." And I'm like, she was not the one committing the crimes. Like, she was just a tool.
Plausible deniability.
Right. I mean, she was ultimately, to your point, Jaci, she was definitely an unknowing accessory to theft at that point. And so you were making the point.
It was so weird. First of all, it was so dramatic.
It's because it's Cooler. He has to save the day. He does. Nose Marie says that a totally different way. Here's what she says. She says, "We got our baby back."
And then she went, "Baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back."
Yeah.
Julie.
This Cooler has to.
Yeah,
Say,
it was just.
he has to swoop in.
I was like, for those of you who've been watching, no, she was not. She was not the one committing the robberies and the jewel theft. Like she was an accessory, but it's not like it was your classic, like, oh, she got in with the bad crowd. She didn't know.
Right.
Should stars in her eyes.
She literally did.
Yeah.
The animation in this episode have stars in her eyes.
What would have been, I guess, as a curious point, now that we're far past where this writer room, and hopefully they've learned some lessons and they've kind of grown and matured, fingers crossed, but who knows? What would have been some better things for Cooler to kind of have said at the very end of this episode? But can I hear it in an Arthur Fonzarelli tone?
Yeah. If they're not your friend, they're a stranger. I don't know.
Oh, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're not your friend, they're a stranger.
Yeah, because that to me is actually the better takeaway, was that she trusted this man. Now, again, she was so desperate. So maybe it's like, don't give, what would my mother would say, why buy the cow when you could get the milk for free? Kind of along those lines of like, don't give it up. Hold out.
Okay.
She should have held out for a better owner, but she was so desperate.
And I also want to mention too that just in terms of how like animal alliances or adoption societies actually give out animals, it's not just like, hey, you show up in a convertible and I take a dog with me. Like, they actually interview you. You have to talk with them. You bring the dog home for a day to see if it is a good fit in terms of your space. Like, they're much more considerate, understanding, and there's a process. This was challenging because, a lot of this show and the whole point that they're making early on is that today's adoption day and we need to adopt these dogs. And to me, I was like, isn't that every fucking day for you guys?
Yeah. Because, and maybe it wasn't like that in the 80s. That's what made me think about that. Is like, we recently, well, it's been a year ago, hand to God, that we adopted our baby girl, my husband and I. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was easy. Maybe you showed up and you could get a dog, which wouldn't surprise me in the 80s because, like, what paperwork was anybody doing?
I mean, I remember in the 80s when my mom and my sister and I went to an adoption place and we adopted a cat. We had never been there before. We like went and came home with a cat.
Right.
And like that was it.
I made 3 trips to Fairfax, Virginia. Excuse me.
Yeah. I was going to say in the
Fairfax,
80s,
Virginia.
anyone could pick up anyone on a schoolyard
That's
up until
exactly right.
1983.
You needed a Twizzler and a state of mind.
You didn't need to be like a permission slip or something like that. A Twizzler in a state of mind.
Yeah. Tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, it's challenging, and I think hopefully as a society we've learned a little bit more about how to find what they call like a forever home
Right.
for a pet. And so,
Yeah.
you know, this show I think contextually would never work today for the simple fact that like it completely disregards that idea and focus for animals in general. It's like these are commodities that you just need to get into your house.
Right.
Instead of thinking how we perceive pets to be now, which is like this is a member of our family that like we deeply care about.
Well, Holly's also running this, like, she's running a lemonade stand because she's 9. She hasn't taken any business courses. I mean, again, maybe these systems were in place, but you have, you know,
a 9-year-old.
A 9-year-old
I
running
mean,
the
if
pound.
Holly had letters behind her name, like if it was like Holly, whatever her name is, like PhD, MBA, you know,
Right.
DDS,
DDS, dog DDS.
For pup, she's a pup degree.
Get it?
What a pedigree!
Oh, I'm into it. Yeah, I sort of think that they missed the ball though in the adoption situation.
Yeah, I think there's
It's
a
just-
lot they could have
It's
explored.
kind of disgusting because when they're done with the adoption day, they're like, wah, wah. And all the pups we've met have not been adopted. And it's like, well, they're not shit shows. Like, what happened? Bright Eyes was fine.
If you look at what they have for those dogs that were adopted, they were all sort of like the chocolate lab kind of like brown puppies that you would assume would be part of the Pound Puppy toy line that didn't have like particular personalities. It was just a great dog that like you mapped your own stuff and fears and wishes onto that stuffed animal. In this case, the weird message that I kind of received, which I know was not probably intentional in any way, shape, or form, was like, if you have personality, you're not going home with anybody. Which, to Bright Eye's point, she had personality. Like, she had something going on. She had something distinguishing about her. But it's like, if you're not part of the collective dog group, you're just going to stay here forever in a green jacket. You're like, that's creepy.
That is
Wow.
very
Dark?
deep
Yeah.
and illuminating.
It's like
really-
bars at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's what?
Being at a bar at 2 a.m.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, because you're right. Like, don't stand out too much.
Can you say that in Cooler's voice, Denny?
I don't know.
yeah.
Don't stand out too much.
That seemed like a real stretch.
Don't stand out too much.
Don't stand out too much.
Don't stand out too much, Angela.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
man.
can't. But don't stand out too much for real, kids. Those of you listening at home,
Get home safe.
get home safe.
So I want to, we've kind of watched this. I know that we've also talked about Peter Pup, and I think there's a lot of stuff that's there, but I wanted to just check first and foremost, was there any final thoughts about this first episode that we talked about?
Okay, final thoughts about this first episode.
I thought it was very leftist and classist, and it was everything we're struggling with today. And I wish the episode had never been made. Let me make that clear. Like, no, not because, like, I just think it's not a great television show. But at the same time, if you watch it thinking, how does this relate to today? There's an evil rich person. There is a meek poor person trying to do good with people, dogs, who are less advantaged. The themes are the same as we're dealing with today. That's literally what struck me, is this feels very classist, and it feels exactly like what we're going through today.
So I want my nostalgic television shows or shows that I watched when I was younger to come wrapped in a bow with like an Uncle Jesse, Danny Joey speech at the end. Like, what are we taking away from this?
A little bit of light piano and a hug.
Exactly. And it was kind of alarming to watch this and really feel like it's just misdirected. There was no takeaway. It was just about bad people and escaping those bad things. And like they want to help her, but it doesn't even seem they're like trying to save her was more about like the scandal of saving her and the adventure of it than like I don't know. I feel like it was lacking the heart that I would have that I went into this expecting to see. There wasn't as much heart. There wasn't as much of a lesson. Instead, I think it was just misdirected. There was a lot going on and a lot that didn't connect and a lot that didn't make sense. And yeah, maybe at the end of the day, had there been more Howler, maybe it would have been a better episode.
I don't know. That's my Howler. It's half Howler, half
You're working
Chelsea.
on it. Charles
But
Nelson
I
Riley.
do want to bring up, because this is something I found fascinating. Howler is able to communicate across the country via howling.
Yes.
And I just thought that was the weirdest. Like, the rest of them aren't able to do that. And I thought it was fascinating.
It was a fun telephone game.
It was
I liked
weird,
that
yeah.
visual.
Yeah.
That was a cool visual.
It was a good lightning bolt across.
like the
yeah.
map of the United States
Yeah.
and then just sort of
Yeah.
the barking going from
Yeah.
place to place.
Speaking of which, so they're on the East Coast, is what's implied from that moment. There's a moment where Howler is putting out a call to find Bright Eyes, and you see the call go from East Coast to West Coast.
Right. And it was like definitely northeast
Right.
in terms of the
Totally.
location. Like it looked like it was something that was like maybe New York State.
Westchester. I
West-
mean,
yeah, it was interesting.
Cooler,
One of
Cooler was
the-
definitely on his home turf, and maybe Nosemarie got flown in
Mm.
because she's got a
For real.
draw.
She's the Blanche Devereaux of this.
yeah.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're
No.
not.
Well, in season 1 and then in season 2, she's too buttoned up.
Fair enough. I thought that it was really interesting that we had a PSA at the end of the episode where the whole message was just like, hey, it's cooler again, because why would it not be? And I can't stop doing the voice too. Where it's
Do
just
it.
like,
do
hey,
it.
he's like, you know what? Your dogs, they're at home all day and they're waiting for you to come home. So like maybe take them out for a walk and
Play
like
with
give them
them.
a little bit of exercise.
Play with them.
I had a moment just now where I'm like, Sean, what PSA are you talking about?
Right.
Because like I didn't even take that seriously.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it had a good message in terms of, hey, if you have a dog, it's a member of your family. You need to actually provide them with some stimulus, some input, some exercise.
All true.
Yeah, which is great, and you should. It's just funny that it kind of comes off in this like, hey, like hey, put a leash on your dog and take him out.
Does this continue? Do we have any idea? Does this continue throughout, though?
I mean,
Is
I'd
there
be curious.
25 PSAs?
I'd be curious to know if this was a first season thing and
Yeah.
then they revamped it when they did all new Pound Puppies in season 2, because we did not see one with Peter Pup.
Yeah.
Which I want to say, are there any particular questions that we have kind of as we come to the end of the evening about Peter Pup?
What a fraught question.
Oh.
I mean, Peter Pup. Do you want to go?
Well, so Peter Pup is basically about getting Whopper to stop lying.
Right.
And they use, to me, a fun device of a story within a story where
Mhm.
they escape to a world where the whole cast of Pound Puppies is now cast in this fairy tale that is being told to Whopper to get him to stop lying. But they use Peter Pan as the device when I'm like, Pinocchio is a very equally well-known fairy tale about lies. And then to your point earlier, even like the Wizard of Oz, like they just, it was such nonsense. And at one point they cut back into real time, but then it was as if that was part of the storytelling, like at the end.
Right.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was so sloppy and it really lost me, and it was so bad. And so yes, the fact that this was the highest rated episode on IMDb is scary, because it just to me it's always fun to see that type of like, oh, we're gonna do Cinderella with this, and they just didn't even do it. They were like, let's use the Peter Pan title, but yeah.
It's crazy how kind of misguided it is, because they had, again, if they're doing a story within a story, you have limitless opportunity.
That's right.
And ability, and they were like, we're gonna use the wrong story.
And I hate to go back to the writers' room.
No, you don't. No, you fucking
But I
don't.
have to ask, okay, Peter Pan's one thing. He starts disappearing like the guy from Back to the Future.
Yes.
Do you see
Yeah,
the guy from Back to the Future?
like
Marty
Marty
McFly
McFly
starts
at
disappearing
some
from his
point.
own picture. He starts disappearing. That's weird. Then all of a sudden he becomes 10 times the size of he's supposed to, which is from the League of Justice. It's from Adam. It's a different superhero power. Anyway, Peter Pup, it turns out, has both limitations and powers that Peter Pan does not have. And so it doesn't make any sense to me what's happening in this story. And then they dip half disappeared Peter Pup into lava or something, or a boiled whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, it won't hurt him because he's not even there.
I think the crazy thing is, too, is that if you're thinking to yourself, hey, Jaci, Denny, Sean, give them the benefit of the doubt in terms of what they're doing for Peter Pup. Like, and my response is no. Because they dress up cooler like Peter Pan.
That's exactly
the
right.
entire context is that he is Peter
Right.
Pan, and like
Knows
sure,
Marie is, what's her name? Tinkerbell.
yeah,
And of course, Cooler has this ongoing nonsense bit where he's in this Peter Pan costume and he keeps turning to the audience and being like, I wish I was in a baseball uniform. What does that have to do?
God.
There's like multiple times where he's like, I'm uncomfortable being in green tights, flying around, doing cool stuff.
He's homophobic. That's
Right.
why. Because he's
Right.
homophobic.
Totally homophobic.
I wish I was in a leather jacket, sniffing female
exactly.
butts.
He's
And
mad.
you're like,
This is what a millennial would
So-
say. And I'm not saying it, but this is what a millennial would say. Fragile masculinity. That's the whole point. He's
Yeah.
not comfortable being in tights.
I think he's a dog's dog
He's a dog's
in terms of the masculinity that he wears on his leash, and it's not gonna.
The dog's name is Whopper. You're not going to teach him not to tell lies. He's been telling lies since season 1, episode 1.
Maybe like call him a name, because I don't know about you, but like I had a dog growing up, and our dog, my sister and I named our dog that was a Chihuahua and a Terrier mix off of another dog's name that we heard and we loved, and we ended up naming our dog Turbo.
Oh, that's a great dog.
Cute.
Thank you. And so Turbo became, and like, when we got it, it was a very energetic, it was a very young puppy. But then like over time, like that dog became Turbo. Like it mapped that word. Like it would run.
Interesting.
It would run around our house and like all over the place and do laps. Like it was a hyper dog, and there was always a part of me that was just like, did we do this to this pup? Or like, is this just like genetics and this just happens to be a coincidence? And like, I mean, I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
It is. I know. Let me tell you why. We had a dog growing up named Rowdy. Couldn't have been more well behaved.
Really?
Yeah, it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, never once got out of line.
Well, I'm glad that I I'm glad that I was able to dispel all of my childhood thinking.
One of us worked through our childhood issues tonight.
I know.
Exactly.
Oof.
Hi-yo.
Denny.
Hey, guys, do the work. Put in the hours. Go to therapy. I can't recommend it more.
I think the main thing that we're doing here in terms of like cartoon and being able to understand this is that they at some point they could have just started calling Whopper. They could have been like, hey, so we renamed you and your name's now Truth all the time.
Yes.
And like, I'm cooler, so I can do that.
Because I'm cooler than you, and I get it.
Cool. I'm cooler
Like,
than you.
Yeah, that's why that's
good,
his
Jackie.
name.
100%.
I like that.
Challenges.
Peter Pup was challenging for sure.
Yeah.
It really made me want to, and not that this is helpful now, I want to watch at least like another episode.
Really?
I do, just to figure it all out. Like I need peace with this show.
It was a lot, the last one. I mean, the first one was formulaic. The second one was the like fever dream of a crazy person.
Yeah.
There's language, and I noticed it, I think, more in the second episode in Peter Pup, that was used that I can't imagine being okay on TV shows today.
Really?
Even words like stupid or hate or lame, like there were words Is this?
It's interesting that you say that, because for the Teddy Ruxpin episodes that we watched, there were moments where one of Teddy Ruxpin's friends, Grubby, would say, like, I hate adventure. And it was like really strong
jarring.
words that, you're just like, that's a very clear emotion. And Teddy Ruxpin's response was like, you just have to have a better attitude about it. And you're like, ooh, no.
Smile more. That's that
Yeah.
whole smile more situation.
And then he just kind of gave him a little slap.
Mm,
He's like, buck up,
love that.
winks.
Yeah,
The 80s.
I don't think now that would fly.
No.
I don't. I really, because it was very jarring to me, and but I guess none of this would fly except
But
for
let me
Peter
say
Pup,
this.
because he's a flying dog.
But we're products of this. So the three of us sitting around this are products of this. So while I certainly have flaws, I don't know that we're worse off for it. What do you feel about people watching something that can't use those words now?
It's interesting. Denny, why did you just pull out a clipboard?
I've been checking things off a list.
Okay, that's interesting.
No, I feel strongly about this. Like, I don't want to veer us off course here, but we're products of these cartoons, and I don't think it was such a bad thing.
I think it made me a bit dramatic.
Oh, well. No one's going to argue.
If we've all reflected on our childhoods, I guess it's my turn. Yeah, I think television like this, being like, she escaped a life of crime. Like, I was like, well, that's what life has to be. It's got to be that it's black or white. It's no drama or all drama. You stay up past curfew, you're going to go to prison. Like,
Yeah.
Wow.
like,
That's a good point. You're right. It was like I was just talking to someone about the Say No to Drugs campaign with Nancy Reagan.
right.
That's how it was. It was like, you use cocaine the first time, you're going to die. Like, it was a very extreme methodology they were using in the 80s to hypnotize us.
Yeah, I mean, it was very strong language, too. I mean, I don't know that I'm any better or any worse for kind of, watching and having exposure and being a product of this era. But it's interesting to kind of, think about, like, I don't know that I got, because I was really quiet. I was really quiet for a very long time. And, but I still watched all of these shows. I still watched all this stuff from Nick at Night.
Right.
It none of it kind of ever really dawned on me to, like, talk up or be aggressive or be kind of like verbally acute in terms of what was going on in conversation, and I guess I just didn't have that kind of like dramatic exposure. For me, it was just like, be okay. And I was all and looking at a lot of these cartoons too, the idea for me was like, well, I'm not in my kid brain. I have to always think that my idea was like, well, this is never going to happen to me. I'm not a dog, and so it like no matter how much personality was mapped onto them to make them anthropomorphic and real and relatable, there was always a part of me that's just like, well, I'm never going to have katana blades. I'm not a Ninja Turtle. Like, I'm a human. Like, I wouldn't get that, I don't know why that was always the case, but there was always just like a very realistic, like, I understand this, and like I get what they're saying, but it's not applicable to me.
It's a very analytical mind that you have.
Yeah, I'm very robotic sometimes.
Yeah. Weren't you playing Ninja Turtle?
I had a lot of toys. I played toys all the time.
You played toys, but you didn't dress up as.
I mean, I like Halloween,
Yeah.
but I mean, that was really it. I think that was sort of really the extent. So,
Well,
no role playing for me. Sorry, Denny.
no.
Pound Puppies. Pound. What do we say?
Hey, Pound Puppies.
I'm gonna pound
Pound
you.
Puppies.
Let's pound this out.
Yeah. Let's pound that pound pussy.
Oh,
God.
Too far?
there it is.
Is that too far?
Thank you, Sean, for
Okay,
having
I
us.
did it.
Oh, my
I took
God.
us too far. So.
Well, we obviously have very distinct opinions about Pound Puppies tonight. And before we get into our recommendations, guess what? Yeah, you listening right now, you weirdos. You guys actually happen to have opinions of your own. And so to honor those, we are going to throw this over to longtime listener and friend of the show, Bobby Anthem, for this week's Love It or Hate It. Bobby, take it away.
This week's Love It is titled, One Word, Adorable, by Anthony Rigoni III in July 2011. He wrote, when I was a kid, I used to watch Pound Puppies on Cartoon Network. The Pound Puppies consist of 5 puppies who vow to find an owner for needy puppies. They are allied with Holly, a nice girl who was forced to be a ward for the evil Katrina Stoneheart, an evil lady who will stop at nothing to capture the Pound Puppies and lock them up for good. Holly has a gift called puppy power, an ability to understand the Pound Puppies. As for Katrina, she is aided by her bratty daughter named Brattina and their evil cat named Catgut. What I liked and remembered about the TV series is the theme song, the story, and the characters. Mostly the characters and the theme song. In Season 1, the animation and character design is good. In the Season 2, wow, that is the best character design ever. This is, without a doubt, one of the greatest TV shows I have ever seen. This TV series was a memorable, wonderful, and adorable classic. 10 out of 10 stars. And our hated is titled, Let's Just Forget This Thing Ever Existed, from General Lucas in June 2014. This one was edited due to length, and it says, there is no way to provide redemption for this show. It fails completely at storytelling basics. For example, in stories, plots are the goals characters are pursuing. Therefore, plots are character motivations. When plots intersect, like the one of the protagonist and the one of the antagonist, conflict arises. The problem thus with this series is that the antagonists don't have a single rhyme or reason to do anything. They're just mean and give the idea that they're borderline or something. Oh, and there's a gigantic Transformers outcast called Captain Slaughter who wants to kill all the puppies. Why, you may ask? Never explained. And the daughter of the main villain, I think she's around age 10, has a crush on that guy. I wish I was joking here. The story itself is also completely unclear. I found it very hard to understand what was going on. The characters themselves are also completely forgettable. Nothing makes them interesting, except perhaps for Whopper's fantasies. Oh, and the puppies? They're not normal quadruped dogs. They are anthropomorphic dogs with clothes on. How does that connect in any way to the toy franchise it was supposed to represent? Isn't that what these kinds of series are for? You know, create a context children can get lost in, that they then want to have toys based on that? Like they did with Transformers, G.I. Joe, and My Little Pony? So yeah, it's bad. Stay away from this. 2 out of 10 stars.
Flawless as always, Bobby. I feel bad for almost having him read some of that last analysis for the Hate It, just because that person really, really did not enjoy that show at all. So, but thank you, Bobby, as always. And we are going to continue our campaign. If you want to animate Bobby Anthem in 2018, we want to get Bobby Anthem animated in any way, shape, or form. This could be fan art. This could be anything. Bobby, we feel that this would be perfect for you, buddy. So
Wonderful.
We love you. So now we're at the point where we get to do our love it or hate it and our recommendations. And so as always, we can recommend the show and we can kind of give some context why. We can also say that we do not recommend this show with an explanation. And if we don't recommend it, we have an additional throw in where we can say that we are going to give this show the dip, which is of course going to erase it from the annals of cartoon history. And Jaci is making such a face right now. I feel like you're worried.
I'm
and
stressed. Yeah.
do you want me to go to Denny first?
No, I'll go
Okay,
first.
great.
Because we know, I mean,
Okay, go ahead.
Denny, it's all going to go to the, he's going to bomb the writer's room.
Yeah, I'm fine with the animation.
I think I'm a very firm don't recommend it.
Okay.
Because I think watching it is going to make you, it's going to have you lose a little bit of that magic that maybe you have when thinking of watching cartoons as a child. It doesn't make you feel good the way, like when I see, you know, like when I watch the Peanuts, you know, Christmas special, Charlie Brown Christmas special, no matter what, I will always feel something, like my heart will be just full. And this, my heart was draining slowly. So I don't recommend it.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Jaci.
You're welcome.
Denny.
I'm with Jaci. Do not recommend. When you mentioned Pound Puppies, I was excited because I had a Pound Puppy and I loved it, and it reminded me of my mother's house where we used to live, and she doesn't live there anymore. And I loved it. I thought, I'm just gonna love this. And what I would say to the listeners is, we've done the hard work, so you don't have to. Do not rewatch this at all. I would not, though, dip it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because then I wouldn't, if we dipped it and it was erased from the annals, then I would not have my Pound Puppy, which I remember so fondly. And I'm sure in the 1980s this served a purpose for someone. I just don't know who.
No, I understand. And I think we're going to be 3 for 3. I am not going to recommend this show either. And I think the main reason really goes to Jaci's point, and kind of peppers in a little bit of what Denny has said as well, is that if you had that nostalgic anchor point for Pound Puppies, the toy, and then you watched the cartoon, I feel like there's a severe disconnect from the toy that you may be familiar with to the cartoon itself. And yes, of course, the cartoon exists for the sole purpose of being able to continue to sell the toy line and make things like that available. But I do not remember, and from doing research, I don't think that they ever made a cooler character Pound Puppy, or there was never really a Nose Marie in terms of what they had. They were fun, lovable dog puppies that you had that were stuffed animals, but they didn't have the unique personality that you saw in the cartoon that we've watched for this evening. And I feel like in some cases that personality that we saw in those dogs for the cartoon is what kind of really turned, at least in sense for me, turned me off from the cartoon itself. Like, I liked the original Pound Puppies for the fact that, like, it didn't have that personality, and I could create it, and I made that, and that was something that I kind of instilled upon that toy. But for this, I feel like there's some very specific and personalities that they have that I don't think would have resonated with me at 6 years old, or however old I would have been in the 80s, having that kind of a toy. And so to make that jump into the actual cartoon, I think it's very frustrating to kind of watch and understand some of the missed connections and things that were lost in translation. And then I just think sometimes, the content of the show can be fun, but sort of some of the weird personalities and kind of quirks that we've talked about in terms of the writing today, it just made it challenging to get into. And so I don't think I will go back to Jaci's point and actually watch another episode unless it's to actually check out some of the PSAs that they have at the end. I think that that's the only portion that I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about. Man, so that is 3 for 3.
Oh.
Do not watch Pound Puppies. We took this out with a bang. Or, I mean, we took this out with a euthanized dog. So
it had to happen at some point, and I'm glad we saved it for the
rabies
ends.
and whatnot.
Geez.
Oh, is it curable, rabies? Am I supposed to put it down?
I don't think for dogs it's curable.
Yeah, right. So you got to put it down.
Yeah, that's sad.
Maybe they could do like a We Are the World type.
We are
for
the
rabies.
puppies.
Like Hands Across America, but for dogs.
Bring back Cooler and the gang one more time.
Hey, we got rabies.
We are the future.
We're gonna bite you.
Why did he sound like Mr. B-52?
No, they all sounded
Fred
like
Schneider as a
it's
Pound
a
Puppy.
real white United Colors of Benetton situation. It's too much.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to thank Jaci and I want to thank Denny for coming on the show tonight. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. This was excellent. Glad to have you on for your first time.
Yes.
This is wonderful.
Exciting.
This was
We
great.
loved it.
And so what I wanted to do is I want to ask if you guys are interested, if people would like to learn more about you, or if you have anything coming up, how and where can the people find you or potentially communicate with you online?
Cool. I am on Instagram, Jaci of all trades. There are underscores in between each word. But more importantly, I will be performing Labor Day with iMusical if you're in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center on Labor Day. It's a free show, so come on out. I believe it's at 3 or 3:30. So check out Kennedy Center's Page to Stage Festival. And I'll be doing an improvised musical with iMusical, which is an ensemble with Washington Improv Theater.
Very cool. Awesome, Jaci.
I am on Instagram, but I don't know what my handle is since I don't post anything. I just watch other people. I don't know why Jaci didn't promote this, so I'll promote it for both of us. Jaci and I are currently on a troupe together that is no more. So September 17th, the Source Theater in DC at 14th and T Streets Northwest. We will be holding our last troupe improv show. It's the troupe is called Commonwealth, and so end of an era. Commonwealth in one form or another has been around since for the last 8 years. Jaci and I have been on it. Jaci a little longer than me, but Jaci and I have been on it for a while, and so come out for that September 17th. witdc.org. Get your ticks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Everyone, you've heard him on the show, our friend Bobby Anthem. You can hear him on his paranormal podcast, Inhuman Experience. You can find him on. You can find this show on Twitter at IEXP_podcast, and you can like him on Spreaker and SoundCloud. He's also the occasional third co-host on the THT Movie Podcast, which broadcasts every Saturday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard on Mixlr. You can also find him on Twitter at Bobby Anthem. Send him some love. He's simply the best. As for me, I perform in Washington, D.C. with a group that's called Knox. That's NOX exclamation point. We perform with Washington Improv Theater. You can find tickets and times, as Denny had said, witdc.org. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Paul Ellis. If you're looking for Dave, you can find Dave on Twitter at Dr. ClawMD. You can also find all of his writings on Nerdist.com, Collider.com, and DaveTrumbore.com. If you want to communicate with us directly here at this little show, you can email us SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. You can find our Twitter at MorningTunes. Check out our Facebook and our Instagram account at Saturday Morning Cartoons to keep the conversation going. You can also check on any of our social media platforms. We have something called Linktree that's in the bio, which will show you all of the different social media accounts that we have and where you can find our show. In fact, you can even see all the cartoons that we've watched, over 200 plus episodes, and you can send us a cartoon for us to watch on a future episode. You can listen to our over 200 plus episodes and our monthly twice releases that we have on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, now Spotify, wherever fine podcasts are sold. That's going to wrap it up for Pound Puppies. We are done. I feel like we can't go out of this episode without doing some weird panting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Do-do-do-do-do.
That's it, everyone, and we'll see you in September. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.